It's time for another episode of Love, Marriage, and Fantasy. I am Star Claiborne.
And I am Anton Leonard Claiborne, and we are your global relationship strategists.
We live our marriage on the guided principle no one or no thing.
So, take some time, listen as we make sense of all of this. In this episode, the topic will be, is love at first sight possible? We got this topic idea from watching a popular show called Marriage at First Sight. Star, you ready?
I don't know if that really sounds ready, but I really am ready.
All right, so let's get into this discussion where we are addressing, is love at first sight possible? On this show, the couples did not know anything about the person they were going to marry. They had not seen them nor talked to them. So the idea of the show is to get people to fall in love at first sight. So they started by marrying them the first day they see each other. Is that a good description of the show, Star?
Yes.
Okay. I found the show to be interesting because it allowed me to see people reacting to someone they wanted to be with, but didn't know anything about that person. I thought that was real interesting. That got me to thinking about how people say it's possible to fall in love the first time you meet somebody or the first time you see someone. I've watched the show and I will conclude that it is possible, to fall in love at first sight. Well, let me not say fall in love because that wouldn't be an accurate description of what's happening on the show, right?
Um, Not from what I have seen thus far.
Right. I don't think falling in love at first sight is what they're trying to do. But I would say I don't think it's possible to love someone or be in love with someone the first time you meet them. And I'm not just saying this because of what I saw on the show, but because I know that you have to get to know someone, and that takes time before you can say, I love you.
Right. I would say that when you really think about seeing someone for the first time, and you have people who say that I fell in love at first sight, or, I knew this was my love and all that stuff. It's like, okay, are you falling in love with the potential idea of what you've seen in your head to happen? Or are you falling in love with his or her life, their looks, right? Are you falling in love with their looks? Are you falling in love with um, the emotions that you're feeling at that point in time? Because when you meet someone, you go through that thing of if you're dating seriously, let's put that out there. If you're dating seriously, you have this idea of what you want. And so when you meet that person, if there's a physical attraction to that person, you immediately start feeling something emotionally, right? Because you already have that physical attraction to that person. So you then kind of go through this process in your head of what it might be like to be with that person forever, or to be married to that person, or to have a life with that person, if you're dating seriously. Because when you're out there dating, you know that you want to be married. Like, that's your ultimate goal, is to be married and have a family and start a family. So the bigger question would be like, are you falling in love with that person as a whole, or are you falling in love with the idea of what could potentially be? And I think a lot of times it's falling in love with what could potentially be and the emotions behind it.
I think the way that marriage is described to children, it is part of the problem that people face when they decide to get married.
So what do you mean?
I mean, we grow up with these ideas of what marriage is supposed to be like. Even before well, let me not say in all cases, but in some cases, even before a person starts dating as a teenager, they have had this idea of what marriage is supposed to be like, placed in their mind, either by someone they know in their house, like their parents or a relative, right? And so they grow up with these ideas. As a result, when it's time for them to get married, they're going into it with their cup half full, with these ideas that they've been holding on to all these years. And as a result, so if they come into an issue in their marriage or in their engagement, they're still feeding off of those ideas that was in their cup since their youth. They're still looking toward those examples as guidance as to how they should handle this new situation they're in their own marriage. And I think if there was anything that should be eliminated before a marriage takes place, it's the old information that a person was introduced to about marriage since their childhood. It needs to be eliminated. They just need to get rid of it.
Right.
So that when they go into that marriage, they're not going into it with expectations.
Yeah. Do you think that a lot of the millennials have already started doing that though, and breaking away from those old ideas?
Do I think the millennials have a better chance? Well, you didn't ask me this, but I was just thinking this in my mind. I was thinking, do the millennials have a better chance of breaking some of these generational curses? Yeah, I do. I think they have a better chance at doing it because they already have a more of a free spirit mentality.
Well, I think they're already breaking them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know, there's some out there that are still having that idea, but I still feel like there are a lot of millennials who are definitely breaking away from the traditional just in general, because a lot of the millennials don't have that best idea of what a marriage is supposed to look like by example.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not the millennials, maybe those that are kind of on that cusp, but most of the millennials themselves don't really have that example of what a good marriage looks like. They have, and we've talked about this before, that fantasy idea from watching TV.
Right.
And even with that, there's so much drama in it that's included in that I don't even really know what way millennials look at relationships, how they really feel about relationships, and where do they get their source from of how to even handle a relationship.
Right. They have so many different sources that they get information from that you really don't know what they're dealing with. So, okay, question. The couples that was on the show, are they mainly millennials?
Yes. The ones that were on the show were mainly millennials in the episode that I watched. And again, even the whole married at first sight idea in itself is more of a millennial, yes, I'll do this type situation.
Why do you say that?
There aren't too many I don't feel as though, this is my opinion, I don't know for a fact, but if you talk to most people, they're going to go through that traditional, like, nah, I need to get to know somebody. I'm not with just marrying somebody. Like, let's go to the altar. Hey, it's my first time seeing you. Let's do this. Like, that is a millennial, to me, I feel like that's a millennial type mindset. Or, I guess, what's the next one? Millennial and Gen Z?
Gen Z.
It would be.
Generation Z.
Yeah. Actually, no. Actually, they were millennials and Gen Z.
Okay.
But beyond that, I just don't see too many people or too many of the next generation saying, yes, let's go do this. Married at first sight is definitely again, that's a breaking the tradition situation. They're already starting to break the tradition.
Just because
we're going to marry first and then work it out,
married, right? Without knowing each other. That's something, well, yeah, that would be breaking the tradition. Although, I did have a family member who got married just because, she wanted to know what it was like. And so, but okay, I should say but she had been dating the guy she married
But we're talking
before
about
they got
married at first sight.
Right.
The first time you actually talk to this person, see this person, that's the first time you see this person, you're getting married. The first time you talk to this person and introduce yourself to this person is at the altar getting married.
Right.
Like, hi, this is me and I do. What next?
Well, do you think you would go on that show?
Do I think I would go on that show?
Yes. Would you go on the show where they're saying you're going to get married to this guy you don't know? You're not going to talk to him. You're not going to see him until the wedding day.
I would say no.
I would say no also.
I would say no because I've never been a fan of even a blind date. So to go and get married to somebody, that's a whole nother level above a blind date. And I've done a couple of blind dates and
so have I.
They weren't bad. It's just that's not my thinking. Like, you know, and married, like that's a commitment. Like, just because somebody says, okay, I'm going to go and get married to this person at first sight, you still don't know their mental and psychological background.
Right.
That's the biggest thing for me. Like, people can say that's what they want, even based off of tradition. Even if they saw their parents have done it for years and years and still together, you still don't know the psychological things going on in that person's head. It's not a crazy thing. I think it's absolutely awesome for somebody to even try it. That's just not for me.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's kind of cool. And then, you know, for the marriages that actually work out of this thing, like, what a story to tell. I'm just saying, you know, it shows you that it can work, but it's just not for me.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it. I know I wouldn't do it because, as you all know from us telling our story many times before, I was supposed to ask my wife to marry me the day that I met her. So, but that didn't, we know that didn't happen. So, yeah, I wouldn't, knowing that, I wouldn't go on the show like Married at First Sight.
I think it's cool though. I mean, I still think it's cool. It just ain't for me.
Yeah. Although the blind dates I was on, I was really excited about going on the date. And one of them turned out great. The other one, we had fun on the date, but I knew and she knew by the end of it, there was nothing else was going to happen afterward.
So I know we both kind of see marriage very, very similarly, or we wouldn't be here and be married. You know, dating someone and being married to someone, the only thing that changes is the piece of paper, right? A lot of people say that it's a commitment. Marriage is a commitment, but so is being in a relationship. It's both a commitment, right? But at the same time, when you look at marriage, there's just this whole process of, if we don't work out, like, what the heck are the repercussions behind that and all the stress of getting a divorce from someone that I married at first sight that I knew nothing about? And then 6 months down the line, now I have to go through all this drama. And I'm not saying that those chances can't happen with someone that you know, because they can. But it's probably a greater chance if you're getting married at first sight, because you don't know the psychology of that person's mind. You know, you have people who think they want to get married, but they really don't.
Right.
That's when we say in love with the idea, like, oh my gosh, I just want somebody to come home to. Okay, that sounds good. But when you start coming home to that person, and then what? You realize that's not what you really wanted, because you want to be free.
Right. And a perfect example of what you just said was on this season of the show with the one guy. But
there was that example.
There was
where,
an example of what you were just saying.
They said they were all in. They were ready to settle down. They were ready to just do it. But then come to find out at the end of the show, it wasn't. They actually realized during the process that that's not what they wanted.
They realized they had a lot more growing to do.
Right.
So I mean, that just supports what you were saying about not knowing the person's psychology. Their mindset could be so far different from your own where that you may find later on that things are so different that you will have to say, no, I don't think I want to marry this
And
person.
I think that, it could be I don't know, some people might go on the show. I don't know if they're really ready for marriage, but they probably go on the show just to get the incentives that come along with it. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like,
Right.
oh, I'm going to live this fantasy life for about 8 weeks, right? And it could just be a test for them. They may not even be going on the show to say, I'm really ready to be married at first sight. They may be going on there to really test themselves to see if they're ready to be married at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so they may go on there with full intentions knowing, like, I'm really not ready for this whole marriage at first sight thing, but maybe I can try this out to see if I even want to be married, period. Like, am I ready for this? So, they figure it out then, like, am I or am I not? And if I am, of course, it's whether or not you want to be with that person. So, sometimes it's the incentives. I mean, these people were taking some pretty nice, they had some nice days during those 8 weeks that they were together. So, let's go on a honeymoon to Antigua. Not sure how much they had to put in on that, but
well, it was
it's very entertaining.
The show was very entertaining. I will say that.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for the show, and I had this conversation with someone. The biggest thing for the show for me was being able to recognize, like, in my past days, looking at the women that were on there, like, where I stood in those women, like, looking at pieces of me and not realizing the perspective of the guy on the other side, right? And even now still growing, because every day you grow, you see pieces of yourself sometimes, and it's not until you actually see it being played out that you realize that, oh, dang, I'm just like this, or I've had this issue, and I've seen myself do stuff like this, maybe not exactly, but just kind of in a little sense of. So it just puts a different perspective. It could give a different perspective to people actually watching the show, because it's a great show.
Yeah, it is a great show. It's an educational
it is very
program.
Good. You can learn a lot from it.
Yes, if you're interested in getting married, I would say that watching this show could help you. It'll help you prepare for it.
There are experts on the show that know what they're talking about.
Right.
The experts on the show give some really, really good knowledge.
Yes, they do.
And it's things that these couples are walking away with and taking with them and remembering them and holding on to them.
Yes, yes. And I, just to comment on something one of the experts said, when they made the suggestion to the one couple to be a little bit more experimental in the bedroom, that's something that a lot of newlyweds struggle with, because unfortunately they go into a marriage with expectations. Even though both of them may be sexually active adults, when people get into a marriage, they tend to change because they are now married. They tend to change things that they do just because they're married.
Right, and that's where I was telling you, like, the whole idea of marriage, like, to us, the only thing that changed from the night before our wedding to the day of our wedding was a piece of paper.
A piece of paper.
I mean, and that's all it should be. And, multiple people would ask me, oh, how does it feel to be married? How does it feel to be married? It feels the same way it felt yesterday. And, before we got married. And my thing is, if anything changes, you have to ask a question as to why all of a sudden it changed.
Correct. You would have to ask that question. And the advice that the experts on the show gave about about exploring more in the bedroom was really good, not only for the people on the show, but for newlywed couples. Just in case you run into one of those situations where one of you is not being open-minded in the bedroom. You don't want that to be something that causes your divorce, where the two of you aren't communicating in the bedroom. So the experts on the show gave some really good advice.
I think that just comes with taking responsibility for where you're lacking.
Well, yeah, taking
if you know
responsibility
that
for
the
it.
bedroom is an area for you, you got to communicate about that and be willing to get help if you need help, right?
Hmm.
Do your own help stuff, like find your own stuff to help you and try to help get out of that zone. And of course that goes outside of the bedroom as well, but it's just, you got to take responsibility for where you're having your own issues. And this one specifically, I won't say it was an issue for her. I'm just saying that, it was something that she knew was a challenge for him. And it came up multiple times. So it was, okay, what do I need to do to make this work?
You're talking about the bedroom
Yeah.
situation. Okay.
Yeah. What do I do to make this work? You know that just like you had said, okay, it was an issue for men before. So you know it's going to be an issue for this man once you get married.
Right.
And you said you want to be married. So what does that mean? What does that look like? And we know you still have to get to know that person because it is married at first sight, right?
Mm-hmm.
You still have to get to know that person. But like that conversation, and of course we only see what the camera shows us. It could have been a lot deeper behind the scenes. We don't know. But for something as deep as this was, you have to like have multiple conversations about it and make sure you truly, truly understand where each of you are coming from with it.
Yes.
Like multiple conversations.
Yes, you would.
And just lay it on the table and don't beat around the bush with it. Like lay it on the table.
Because they can't, right, lay it on the table and don't beat around the bush because it can't be a one-sided conversation.
Correct.
Both of you would have to be open and honest and expressing everything that you feel so that you'll be able to go into the marriage prepared. I think that the church, is heavily involved in marrying people. I think that the idea the church has as far as recommending premarital counseling, I think that's a good idea. I really do think that, if you want your relationship, your marriage to last, you should go through some type of, premarital counseling, coaching, or, therapy if that's what's necessary. Because it will increase the chances of your marriage lasting once you hit one of those bumps in the road, one of those obstacles that could put a strain on your marriage. You'd be able to remember what you were told in the premarital counseling, right? And then apply it to that situation that you may be facing currently.
Yeah.
Did the couples on the show, did they have to go through any premarital coaching or anything like that?
It didn't specifically say if they went through any premarital coaching or counseling, but I know that there were extensive questions, about their past relationships, about just their mindset and where they were as far as the whole being matched with someone to see who they were matched best with.
Okay, so that's kind of like the marriage assessment that we offer.
Yeah, more of an assessment, I guess you would say. So they have the marriage and family therapist, they have a marriage counselor, and then they have a sociologist on there. So, they go around, they were looking at the homes and, really digging deep into what your house looks like. And, so when they match them, they know everything as much as possible about these people that they're revealing. Unfortunately, there were a couple of them that revealed some information. It was like, oh, I just said that so they leave me alone. I'm like, what the? Like, you came on here to be married at first sight, but you both gave an answer that was not true.
Right.
Right? So when you do that, if something happens, what do you expect? Because you lied from the beginning.
You lied from the beginning.
You're talking to the experts and lied to the experts.
Right.
So just imagine if one of them had been truthful and the other one would not have. They would have never been matched. Mm-hmm. Potentially.
Right.
And it would have been a lost opportunity.
Right.
So it didn't make sense to me. But it's a really cool show. It's a lot to learn. And if you just go into it openly and just kind of look and just be very detailed at what you're seeing and how things are playing out, you can learn a lot. You can learn a lot, and you'll probably see some of yourself in a lot of what goes on. So
just like in real life, if you pay attention, you to people in relationships, you will see parts of yourself in those other relationships.
right,
That's just one reason why, it's common for people to say once you get married, you should be around other couples. And being around other couples, you get to see how they're dealing with some of their obstacles. And by watching them, you may be able to use what they use in your own relationship.
right. So I don't
That
know.
also supports why people say married people shouldn't hang around single people.
Right. But I think, if we circle back to the whole love at first sight thing, I don't see it as being a possibility, but there may be people out there who have a testimony that can say, hey, it was love at first sight for us. Like, I knew I loved this person and not the idea or what I physically saw in this person. Like, I love how sexy you look. I love the sexiness of this. I love the idea of us going and doing this and going and doing that. And I love the idea of us building this home and this family. Okay, that's different from love at first sight. So,
Yes.
it's totally different. So if anybody has any testimonials, we would love to hear them. But
Sure,
I personally just don't feel like love at first sight is a thing. I just don't. I feel like you can't love someone and you cannot love someone on that level until you know them. I love everyone, but loving someone intimately enough to say I'm in love with that person and to love somebody to be with them for the rest of my life in this manner, I have to get to know you. I have to know you. I have to know how you think. I have to know, you know, are you even in a space where you want to grow? Like, that's huge for me. Like, if you're stagnant and you have that mentality of being stagnant, I'm like, no,
right.
That's not going to work for me
No.
because we got to be on the move. You know what
Yes.
I mean? So, there are certain qualities that you look for that make you love someone.
I agree. I think
Right.
everyone wants to be in a relationship that's we'll just say exciting. Right.
Well, I was about to say exciting, but I've heard some people say, no, we're just good where we're at. And I'm like, so y'all not doing, I mean, I don't know what that is. I don't know what that means. So we just be like, yeah, we're good where we're at. Like, so y'all just suck. Like, but they complaining. I'm just saying.
Right.
But that's me on the outside looking in, what you told me. You complaining about everything, but you're good where you at. I'm just saying. So some people, maybe they like, I don't know. Maybe they don't see it as stagnant. Maybe it's something they don't see.
They're good with being comfortable.
Which is stagnant to me.
They're good with being set in their ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it better. Because you could be comfortable but still have an adventurous relationship. I think we're talking more about people who are set in their ways when they say, oh no, we're good where we're at. We're good like we are.
We gotta grow. Like, we gotta go,
yes, we
gotta grow. Like,
yes,
we ain't got time. We can't be stagnant. We got stuff to do.
Yes, we do. We got stuff to do. But if you're one of those people, you like being in a relationship where you're set in your ways, that person is set in their ways, y'all are happy together, you do that because that is what works for you. Don't listen to us and feel like we're trying to pressure you into being an adventurous couple. We're not trying to do that. We want you to be happy in whatever type of relationship you're in if it's giving you what you want from a relationship. So do what works for you, okay?
Do what works for you.
Right. All right, Star. So after watching the season, I'll tell you what I got from it.
Okay.
Right. The one walk away that I got, and then you can share yours.
I'm not sure you don't tell what happened.
All right.
I already almost looked up.
I know.
I figured out if they see the episode.
Right. Okay, so the one nugget of knowledge that I got from watching this show is this. Before you get into a relationship with someone, ask yourself, are you really 100% ready to commit to a long-term relationship? I knew that already. I already knew that, but just from watching other people go through it, it just confirmed what I already knew for myself and what I felt I should be sharing with other people. I truly feel that before anyone gets into a relationship with someone that they are attracted to, they should take a really good look at themselves and ask themselves, am I ready for a long-term relationship? Because it could turn into one.
Right.
That's what I got from it.
I think, again, the whole reason I turned the show on was to see what information I could pull from it to help people in general.
Okay.
But at the end of it, I ended up pulling things from it to help myself.
Okay.
So, like I said in the beginning, I think it was more about, I think the one thing I got from it was looking at the show and taking the show, watching it, and especially if you're in a relationship or getting ready to date or preparing yourself to date, and being real with yourself and seeing where you fit in the pieces of the puzzle of other people on the show. Because again, you may find that you're a piece of every person on that show somewhere, some way, somehow, but you may be looking at them like, I'm not feeling what you just did or what you just said, or how you did it, or how you said it, or how you responded, and thinking, well, damn, do I do this, or have I done this in the past? Like, and looking at the perception of the other person and taking that into consideration. I've always told people, like, perception is everything.
Yes.
You know, and that's where good communication comes in. We can say things over and over again. We can do things over and over again, but until you understand what the other person is perceiving on the opposite end, it doesn't matter, because there's always going to be tension if you can't make sure that the perception is the reality of what's happening. So for me, I think it's about, you know, I took away now I want to watch all the seasons and just kind of see what was going on in my life then in relationships. Is something then affecting now? I mean, I know we're good, but still there's always places to grow. So it's
Right.
like, am I going to see some things in there that can help me? I mean, you know, there's always room to grow and be better. So
yes, there is always room for improvement.
So that's the way I look at it. Like, how can I better myself, and then how can I help better other people? But definitely not doing anything like this unless you know that you really want to be married and committed, and understanding what the word commitment means.
Oh yes, because
so when you look at
everybody,
the show,
it seems everyone has their own interpretation, their own definition of the word commitment.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to say. I can take away from it, though. You know, if I were to do Married at First Sight, I think the very first conversation would be, you know, why did you do this, and what does commitment and marriage mean to you?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what does that mean to you? And then you'll be able to kind of, because it shouldn't be something that should be a hesitation when someone responds. Not if you're going on a show like that.
Right.
I mean, you were bold enough to put yourself out
commitment
there.
To me means
you were bold enough
right.
to put yourself out there like, yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm ready. I'm going to be on TV. I'm going to be showing all this and doing all this. If you can do all that, you should know what commitment in marriage means to you. And if there's a hesitation the day that you get married to that person and they don't know, I think we got a problem. Like, we can't move forward. We can't move forward until you know what that means. And you use that same question as you're dating somebody.
Right.
When you feel like you're ready to go to the next level.
Well, I agree with what you're saying, but I feel that it should happen even before you feel like you're ready to go to the next level with that person that you're dating.
Yeah.
You should ask yourself that question. Okay, I just met this person and I'm really attracted to them. Do I really feel like I'm ready to commit myself to them?
Well, no, I mean,
because in asking yourself that question, once you accept that you want to start dating them, you can avoid that whole idea of us becoming a couple with that person. If you admit to yourself, I'm not ready for a long-term commitment.
Well, what I'm saying is, you should ask yourself that question before you can go date. Period.
Well, yes. Okay, so we're saying the same thing.
I'm talking about when you're with that, when you decide to be with that person, you need to have that conversation of what does that mean for you and what does that mean for them, like the two of you. need to
Mhm.
have that conversation.
Oh, okay, yes,
Just right
yes.
off the top, like that's a conversation. Do you want a commitment? And if they say yes, or something they're looking for, that should be like one of the top conversations and first conversations you have.
Right. On the first conversation you have with that person. I totally agree. Because you've already had the conversation with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Now you need to have it with them to find out where their mind is at about the whole commitment, thing.
And it's a conversation. It's not you trying to convince that person.
Correct.
You just met this person. You can't convince them what a marriage or a commitment is to them. You can't convince them. You can help them if they, don't really get it. But if they say they're looking for a commitment and they don't get it, then we have a problem. Because you have to understand even for yourself, just like you go into it and you've had the conversation with yourself, they should have had the conversation with themselves about what a commitment means to them before they even see you, if that's something they're looking for. So
Yeah.
You're not convincing them what it means to them. You're just trying to make sure that you two are on the same page as to what that means.
That's right. If you're not on the same page, you will know during that conversation because it will be revealed. All right. We hope you got something from this discussion on marriage at first sight or love at first sight. We hope that you'll be able to take something from this discussion and apply it to your relationship, apply it to your marriage, and make your future better than your present. All right. You like that? I like that. Make your future better than your present.
My face over here right now. That was good, husband. That was good.
That wraps it up for another episode of Love, Marriage, and Fantasy.
Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Claiborne Coaching. Download the podcast Love, Marriage, and Fantasy and look us up on Facebook at Claiborne Coaching.
All right, so we'll see you next time.